My name's David Braun, and I work with New Yorkers Against Fracking and United for Action.
I'm Ted Cleary. I also do work with United for Action, New Yorkers Against Fracking, 350.org, and I also am organizing a lot of high school students in the New York area to get active in their school clubs and to join the grassroots organizations to spread word in the community, online, social media, things of that nature.
Great, and why are we both here tonight?
Well, fracking.
We have serious concerns about hydraulic fracturing in New York State, and Governor Cuomo holds either the keys to allow fracking to happen or to close the door and not allow fracking into our state. Fracking is a very dangerous process of natural gas extraction that involves the injection of about 410,000 pounds of toxic chemicals into the ground, of which we know that 31% cause cancer, 42% are genetic disruptors, and 58% are immune suppressants. They want to repeat that about 100,000 times in New York State alone. In other places where they've done fracking, not only has fracking destroyed groundwater and made people sick, but it eviscerates the communities that it goes into because it rips the communities apart, especially as people get sick. And you watch actually the victims of this dangerous practice become focused on as if they were the perpetrators and scapegoated for the sicknesses that they're suffering. So it's absolutely corrupt. And essentially legalizing fracking is allowing people to make money while the rest of us get sick. So it's absolutely critical that we turn out and not allow energy policies that poison us so we can power our lives, move forward, and that we move towards renewable energy, clean, passive, renewable energy, where we no longer have to poison ourselves in the ways of the past. We've been using basically the same energy technology for the past 100 years. Imagine if we used the same technology for communications as we did 100 years ago. You would think that we were crazy. Well, we should start thinking we're crazy for trying to allow something like hydraulic fracturing. It must be stopped, and that's why we're here. Don't you think?
Very well said, extremely eloquent. And essentially that's what David is saying, is that we have to get off the fossil fuel infrastructure. And to permit fracking in New York State is simply to invest more in the fossil fuel economies and the fossil fuel methods, which is a Neanderthal technology of burning fuel to create combustion, which creates carbon dioxide, which creates methane in the atmosphere, which pushes the number of carbon molecules in the atmosphere beyond the 350 parts per million, which is considered unsafe, past the 390 where we're already, and we're seeing things like Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Irene, both of which are supposed to be 100-year storms, but they happen back to back. When two storms like that happen in succession, that's not a 100-year storm anymore, it's an annual storm. And that's where we're living in now. And to continue going down the road of fossil fuel combustion and fracking, which tears apart rural communities, and it would poison anything downstream, and we're all downstream of somewhere else.
Yeah.
And we have the Spectra pipeline coming in at 14th Street, which is essentially mainlining Marcellus frac radon-laced gas into the homes and kitchens of New York City, delivering the leading cause of lung cancer into the lungs of New Yorkers. That's why we're here tonight.
And you know, just to say that Governor Cuomo has been very good in talking about climate change as being one of the causes of Sandy, and we know this to be true. The scientific community has agreed on this, and just this week we found out that methane seepage on these wells is around 9%. And so the analysis is now that fracking is actually, the gas from hydraulic fracturing is actually worse than coal for the atmosphere and for climate change and global warming. So not only is the idea that natural gas burns cleaner than coal, and that's going to be the solution for us for global warming, not true, but it also poisons our water and makes people sick. So there's really no upside to natural gas brought to market via hydraulic fracturing. And we're just trying to reiterate that with Governor Cuomo. I think additionally, not only would we reward Governor Cuomo for moving forward with a renewable energy economy by probably supporting his candidacy for president, we'll also punish him as well. I know that there's about 6,000 people that have signed a a commitment, a pledge to resist fracking in New York State alone. And a lot of those people, when they sign that pledge, intend to do a massive peaceful, nonviolent civil disobedience at the governor's mansion or somewhere in Albany, that they feel so strongly about this that they simply cannot abide while our politicians who are taking money from the gas industry enact foolish, toxic, dangerous policies on the people of New York State.
Now, if we don't frack, like, what other efficient alternative energy is there?
Well, it's funny that you should mention that. So the gas industry basically knows, and along with the oil industry, they're one and the same, that once we start plugging in our electric cars into our solar panels, that they no longer are in business. So there's a couple of scientists, one from Stanford and one from UC Davis in San Francisco or in California, that are telling us that we can be entirely on renewable energy in 20 years. So really what we're being given right now is false options. People say that we need this gas, and that's a lie that has been invented by the gas industry and the oil industry, who spend millions and millions and millions of dollars each year trying to convince us that this is true. But those options are false options. We don't actually need this gas. We can switch to renewables. And in fact, we can give a lot of people in the United States jobs in the process of doing so, and take the money out of the hands of these big corporations that have proven themselves time and time again to be not interested in the people that they're hurting and only interested in making more money.
And just to prove that solar can work, there was one day last August that Germany generated 50% of its entire electricity of a day on one day last summer. Now that's Germany, which is a northern latitude country. The United States is blessed with Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, all the states in the Southwest, which, if properly gridded out, could generate all the electricity for essentially North America.
And not only that, but we can also do wind energy. We can have offshore wind farms. They found that actually we could provide all of the wind energy that we need for the United States in the plain states, and that if we had a smart grid that was built out across the United States, that we could actually utilize this for running our cars, for running our heaters, for running everything it is that we need, that we can move entirely to renewables. It's only that we all drank the Kool-Aid. We all grew up with fossil fuels thinking that there has to be a certain amount of exhaust that pops out of things, that these are things that we have to live with. But it's time that we start thinking bigger than that and differently than that, and start thinking we don't have to poison ourselves to power our lives, that there can be a whole new world here where we don't have to live with these kind of quantities of cancer and leukemia and other heart disease and things like that that we get from burning all of these fossil fuels and spitting these toxins into our environment. So it's time for us to really start dreaming bigger and thinking bigger and enacting better policies. It's not that difficult. It just means breaking away from these terrible corporations that don't have our best interests at heart.
Yeah, the problem with the corporations, of course, is they think in 3-month intervals. They're interested in the quarterly profits, the quarterly reports. That's what their compensation is pegged upon. That's what stocks or stock dividends are geared towards. So they think 4 times per year, every 3 months. Politicians are a tiny bit longer term than that. They think in 4-year intervals, perhaps 6-year intervals if their term is such. They don't think even in a 10-year interval. Never mind 20 years, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, which is what we need to think of as a culture. People used to talk about climate change as being an issue of our grandchildren. That was always the cliche. You got to think of the grandchildren. That's nonsense. The climate has already changed. This is an issue for our grandparents, as it turned out, which is something we never expected. And the bottom line about the economy is there's no such thing as a healthy economy when there's no healthy land, when there's no healthy water, and when there's no healthy air. These are ultimately the basic things.
Yeah. I mean, there's no jobs on a dead planet.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And our kids are going to have a dead planet if we keep going in this direction. The oceans are dying. The atmosphere is heating. Our glaciers are melting. We're getting swamped. We're seeing superstorms like Sandy. And we're only going to see this get worse. And this is actually what the scientific community agrees on. And if we don't change this soon, our grandchildren are going to be up a creek without a paddle, and it's all because we allowed it to happen, or we didn't allow it to happen. So we can either have our grandchildren remember us and thank us for the good work we did, or they're going to suffer on a scale which we can't even imagine.
And it comes down to, coming out on the street on a night like this. It means getting active, going into the schools, telling our families, telling our friends, telling our neighbors, making this a core part of everything we do. We can't just sit back and wait for someone else to do it. We can't just sit back and pretend everything is well. We can't just sit back and watch the NFL and Kim Kardashian, because that's all nonsense. That's just a bunch of distraction, while the lifeblood of this entire world is sucked away. We can't live on ashes. We can't live in a desolated planet.
Now, if people want to find out more about how to stop fracking or getting involved with fracking, is there any websites you could spit out for them?
Sure, actually there's quite a few websites. So I would suggest going to nyagainstfracking.org. Again, that's nyagainstfracking.org. You can also go to foodandwaterwatch.org. You can go to unitedforaction.org. You can go to frackaction.com. So there's a whole lot of information, or you can just Google fracking or go to Gasland the movie. So there's a lot of ways to get information on hydraulic fracturing. There's over 180 organizations in our coalition of New Yorkers Against Fracking who stand for a ban against fracking. And it's not just environmental or anti-fracking organizations, it's good government groups. It's breast cancer groups, a couple of breast cancer groups. We stand with doctors and other medical professionals. We have clergy and religious folks who are involved in the, we have over 1,000 businesses who stand against fracking, including, wineries and breweries like Omegang Brewery and candle makers and, all sorts of different industries that are going to seriously suffer. So there is a whole movement that is standing up to try to ban fracking, but it's tough and we need help. We need people to turn out, we need people to get in the streets, we need people to rally, we need people to make phone calls, we need people to sign up on our email list and take action when we ask them to. This is our future, this is our world, and our children deserve better information. Find out the facts. Read the NYC DEP, Department of Environmental Protection report that said that fracking would be catastrophic for the city of New York if they allowed it in the watershed. If it's going to be catastrophic for the city of New York, it would be catastrophic for the state of New York. Get involved, take action. Future is ours to either win or lose. And if you do, our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come will thank us.
I'll just add two things to that. In regard to New York City's water supply, it's been estimated that if a water treatment plant could be built to try to deal with frac contaminated water, it would cost a minimum of $20 billion, and it would cost a minimum of $1 million a day to operate. Now, in a city of budget cuts, and this is actually a wealthy city, generally speaking, that's completely unaffordable if it could be done at all. Right now, the water that comes to us is clean already. It makes absolutely no sense to destroy the essential clean water resource of New York City and then try to fix it by paying the same guys who destroyed it to begin with. That's one thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is in regard to websites, I would just add the site 350.org. That's 350.org, which is dealing with the larger climate change issue. And there's going to be a national day of action on February 17th, 2013 in Washington, when we're trying to get 10, 15, 20,000 people to rally at the White House, because it is President's Day weekend, to give a clear message to President Obama that he's got to take the type of change that he promised, the hope that he promised when he initially took office in 2008, to get real with world and national problems in regard to climate change.
Great. Yeah. Thank you guys
so
much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Awesome.